Hello, everyone. I'm going to start the session. Welcome. I would ask that you mute your microphones for now because the session is being recorded. And so what we're going to do throughout the session is this is about tips for web presentations. So the first thing I'm going to do is to share some synchronous tips for web presentations. And in the second part, I will talk about more asynchronous options. And lastly, there will be ample time for questions. So if you have questions, either kind of hold on to them, maybe I will answer them as I go through my presentation, or you can post them in chat and I will make sure to answer them at least when we get to the end of the session. So the first thing I'm going to do again is talk about Collaborate Ultra, which is your main in Blackboard, which is our main synchronous option when you want and you need your students to be in the same place at the same time with you in order to do some activity that you have selected. Yeah, I want you to think, though, about whether or not to be synchronous or not. Again, it's a pedagogical choice. You have to decide whether it is really necessary for your students because, again, your schedule changed, their schedules may have changed, and the time they had available to be in class might no longer be available to them during this, well, global crisis. Also, some of your students equipment necessary to be able to properly a Collaborate session, and some of them may join you via their phone or cell phone, and being there for data on their data plan. So if you're going to be synchronous, I would encourage you to think long and hard and maybe poll your students ahead of time on how many of them will be able to make it and will be able to make it for the duration. So this is my first kind of consideration when you decide whether you want to go synchronous or asynchronous. So let's start with synchronous. Again, our main tool here is Blackboard Collaborate. And the first thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to go into one of my other classes and show you how you would create a Blackboard Collaborate area where you would then post the sessions you create. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'll show you how to do that later on. So we are now in one of my development shells, so there's nothing there, there's no students or anything. There are different ways that you could Blackboard Collaborate area. If you want to create your Blackboard Collaborate area again in your regular page, you would go to Tools. You would scroll down to More Tools. Click on that, and then go look for Blackboard Collaborate. So it's a three-step thing, right? Tools, More Tools, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And if you click, it will create on this page, if this is where you want it, it will create a Collaborate area. So again, you can leave the title or call it something else. You can put a description over here of what it's going to be if you want. And then you have your availability options, whether you want to make the Blackboard Collaborate available at all to your students. You don't necessarily have to, as long as they can join the sessions. There are other ways to do that. And if you want to track the number of views, and again, the display dates before and after, so that you can decide. And then you would click Submit. I'm just going to leave those options default. And as always, Blackboard creates new things at the bottom, and this is where you would see your Blackboard Collaborate Ultra area again, where if you click on this then will take you to the area where you would create your sessions, and you have the camera icon here that would do that. So that's one way. Way number two is to go down to your course management left sidebar over here, click on Course Tools, and then go look for the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra menu, and it's going to be the exact same thing. So that's the second way to access Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. Option number three, if you want, instead of having your Blackboard Collaborate area on the page, if you want it permanently accessible on your left sidebar here in your navigation bar, you would go up there to this plus sign here. There is a drop-down menu that's going to appear. You would go to Tool Link. You would give it a name. So I'm going to say Collaborate Area. And then for type, you would click for the drop-down menu and select Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. You can decide whether to make it available to your students or not. And once you've decided, you click Submit. And again, Blackboard is going to create that new thing at the bottom of the sidebar. this is the area in Blackboard Collaborate where I would create the sessions that I want to create. So it's loading. There we go. Depending on how much, again, memory and processing power you have on your computer, this may require a bit more patience. And again, I've one session already here that I've created just as a sample thing. But again, this is your create session button. So if you wanted to create a new session, this is where you would do it. So I'm going to create one just to show you what it looks like. So create session. You would give it a name. So this would be my tips for web presentation session. I'm not going to join the session just yet because I'm not done with setting it up. Then, as soon as you create a session, Blackboard will generate two things for you. One, a phone number with a PIN for people to dial in. If people don't have a computer that they can use to access your session, they can dial in, and you would give them this number and you would give them this PIN, which you would then again copy and then send in whichever format you want. And that would allow your students to join you by phone. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that if people dial in, they will be anonymous. So if it matters to you to be able to tell who is present and who is not, then once people dial in, you might want to make them identify themselves if that's necessary for you. But you have to stop of dialing in. Okay, and the second thing that gets created as soon as you create a session is, again, a couple of things. The guest area, so that your student can access it. You can use, you would leave it by default as participant for your students unless you want to increase their permissions. And Blackboard would also automatically create a link for your students to access this particular session that we are creating. So again, you would copy this, and either you would put the link directly in the Blackboard page where students can retrieve it, or you would create an announcement telling your students, we're going to have a Collaborate session at this time, and you would give them the link for them to access the session at the right time and the right place when the time comes. So again, you can change those things. So for instance, if you had a student who was a presenter, you could give them by default, I would leave it as participant. Then you can set up the date and time for the session. It's going to be available to students. You can repeat it. Again, if you want to set up regular office hours in Collaborate, and so this is something that's going to repeat, I don't know, every Monday at 9 o'clock or something like that. You can open your session early before the start date that you set, and you have a bunch of options over here. And again, if you want to provide an option for your session, that's fine too. More, again, options here. So you can see here and define the options that you want and whether you want to select them or not. And those are all your options. Once you're happy with your setup for your session, you would click Save. And here are created. It's right there. If you want to make changes, you would go to the end of the line. Here you have a little circle with 3 dots. Those are your session options. If you click on that, it's going to reopen the menu I just closed. So you can either join the session. Again, dial in anonymously with that number and PIN. You can edit your settings, or you can delete the session, or you can copy the guest link. This is the link, again, that you would provide for your students for them to access the session once it's the right time and day for them to join the session. So that's basically how you would create both the overall Blackboard Collaborate Ultra area and that you would want to have with your students. So I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to start the sharing of this screen. So that's the first thing you would need to do with your Blackboard Collaborate area. Once you have a session ready, once you are running your session, your students are here, you have now 3 options as to what you want to do. First option, you can share a bunch of things with your students. You can share a basic whiteboard. Right? If you want to write something, demonstrate something, you're teaching math, you want to share, for instance, a specific way of resolving a certain type of mathematical problem or anything, this is what you can do. And at the top left menu, top left side of your screen, you have a bunch of options. You have a selection tool, you have a pointer tool, you have a pencil if you want to doodle, right? If you can write, which I can't. You can change the color of your doodles in different ways. You can create shapes, and you can create text boxes. So if you want to write something and you don't have a nice handwriting, so you would rather use text, you have a text box option to type things up in that menu. And once you're done with everything you need to do, you can erase this with the eraser and everything goes away, and you can start again and do whatever it is you need to do with this whiteboard. Once you're done sharing this part, you would click on that stop share button here, and it would stop sharing, and we're back to the main screen. Right, so share blank whiteboard, you click on that, and here it is. You do what you need to do, and again, when you're done sharing, you can go back. Second big sharing option, you can share either a set of applications or you can share your screen, as I've already done. You have three options here in Collaborate. You can share your entire screen. You can share an application window. So for instance, if you are using some software that is specific to your field and you want to work in that software and you want your students to see you work, you can do that. So let me show you an example. So for instance, I used the RStudio software for statistics. I'm going to share that with you, and you should be able to see the interface. And if I want to be working here, I can do whatever I regularly do in this application. Students will do will see what, and they can follow along, etc. So I can start sharing that. Another option, again application I can use. I'm using Camtasia Studio. Again, if I'm working on a project, I can show my student exactly how to work this software on this specific project, and they can follow along as we go, so that they know exactly what's going on in this activity. So again, if you have some, especially if your field, some specialized software that your students have to use, and you need to kind of demo exactly what they're doing, then this is a good option for you to use. Okay. Another option of what you can share different files. Now, in Collaborate Ultra, you cannot share Microsoft documents. You have to use PDFs. So you cannot use Excel files. You have to use a PDF. But you can use PowerPoint. Let me show you a PowerPoint example. But sometimes things can get a little bit glitchy here. So this is a presentation that I created for another class of mine, so you can see where it is, but I'm going to scroll through a bunch of slides so you can see that sometimes things may happen. So this is the first one. I can paginate and navigate either right underneath the slide here on the right sidebar that has all my slides that I can take a look at. So I'm going to scroll through. And this is where I see there's a problem here, right? These things are aligned, but in the conversion, when you import files into Collaborate Ultra, there's a bit of conversion happening, and some of the formatting may be a little bit messed up. So that's one to keep in mind as you go, especially if you have kind of graphics and things, that it may not look exactly the way you want to. But push come to shove, you can bring your PowerPoint application right here into Collaborate. What I would do personally, if I had to use PowerPoint, I would treat it just like another application that I'm using. So for instance, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, sharing my application window, and here is my PowerPoint presentation. This is the same one I've showed you. I can go into presentation mode. And go through, if I through my formatting is preserved because I am actually from within PowerPoint. So there's no distortion, formatting is not messed up, there's no changes or anything like that. Everything is exactly the way it should be. So maybe just stay in PowerPoint, share your screen, and then show your presentation. Another option, of course, when it comes to PowerPoints, you can also convert them as PDF, and then you show the PDF as you go. So let me show you the same presentation I've used, except now it's a PDF file. And so now the formatting has been preserved because PDF does that, right? So now it looks exactly the way it was supposed to look. The other advantage of using PDF as a format is that if you use a PowerPoint presentation that's big, right, it has a lot of animations, a lot of transitions, a lot of images or anything that you've added. You may even have added a video or something in your PowerPoint. That PowerPoint file is going to get big. So one way to kind of shrink the size of that file, which makes it easier to either send to your student or upload here, is to save it as PDF. It's going to shrink the file, and again, the look and feel of your presentation is going to be preserved. And PDF again is the format that works really well with Collaborate. Let me show you another example. Another type of PDF, you can PDF documents. Again, as I told you, Microsoft Word will not work. So one thing you can do is just create a document in Microsoft Word, save it as PDF, and then you can upload it over here. And Collaborate Ultra in the top left gives you some view controls. So if you think, okay, this is a nice document, but it's a little bit smallish, and I don't know what people can see, so you can zoom in, and then you have, it looks nice and big, and you can work with that. And you can use the same options we've used with the whiteboard. So, and if you want to direct people's attention to something, you can say, hey, you guys, maybe pay close attention to this paragraph. So you can use a shape to highlight something. Or again, you can doodle on your document over here and say, okay, pay attention to this. And you can change the color if you want to do, again, different things. So again, pay attention to this chapter, or again, this section. Do whatever you want. What the important thing to keep in mind is that doing this will not change your document. It's just on top of it. It's a layer on top of it. And once you use the eraser, it all goes away and your document looks exactly the way that it looks. It just helps you kind of guide people's attention to whatever it is you wanted to share with them with this document. And again, you can paginate in whichever way you want, either through the right sidebar or right underneath, and go through everything that you wanted to show them in a document. So if you have to go through a document, bring a PDF over here, and then do that. On the other hand, again, if you wanted to Microsoft document because you wanted to show something specific to Microsoft Word, if you're teaching, I don't know, English, and you have to do specific things about formatting or all these things, then open your Microsoft Word application separately, share your screen with your students, and do the work that you need to do. Okay, I'm going to stop that. Other types of things you can bring, images. So this is an image that I use in my classes. So an image you want to share, again, keeping in mind that your students are going to look at this on a screen that may not be as big as mine, or they may be looking at this from their phone. So if you have images, I would recommend extracting them from a PowerPoint if you have them there, and bring them individually over here so they look nice and big. And just as I showed you, again, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can again direct people's attention with shapes and everything. So you can say, please pay attention to the top of the pyramid here. Also, while you're discussing this aspect, you can direct people's attention. Again, you can doodle things in different ways. So you can tell them, please look at this. And again, it doesn't change the document. Your image is exactly as it always was. And once you remove your annotations, it looks exactly the same, but you can annotate. So if you have, again, if you teach the natural sciences or anything like that, and you have some kind of complex chart or diagram or something that requires a little bit of walking through, then you can, again, guide your students through examining exactly what this particular image is showing them and why you're showing it to them. So again, it's a powerful application. There is no limit that I could tell from on the limit on the number of files that you can bring to Collaborate Ultra. Again, keeping in mind what's going to work well or not so well. Bring PDFs more than PowerPoints. And again, if you need to work with a specific type of file in a specific application, then use the share application option rather than trying to bring those files over here to Collaborate. And again, Collaborate will not accept some of those, so you'll have that option anyway. So those are, again, a whole bunch of really good options for you to figure out. Okay, the second part here, if you want to make your session a bit more interactive, you have the option of limited polling in your class, so you can use the first question. So let's say, as then in your room, okay, who's getting in and who's not getting it? You can do some yes/no choices. So those are limited options, but they can be useful. Just to kind of check if people are following along with whatever it is you are demonstrating in that particular class. And then you can break your session into breakout groups. So that's also an option for you. as I mentioned earlier on, I am recording this session. The question would be, okay, but once I have recorded my session, where do I find it? So let me go and show this to you exactly. So again, I'm going to share my other class with you so you can see what it looks like. So, all right. So we are back to our main Collaborate Ultra area. And as you can see here, you have this little icon here that's called menu. You would click on that. You have your sessions, and then you have your links. So hopefully this is where your recordings would be, basically. Here we go. So I have one here. This was a test one that I actually created. So again, once I started recording in Collaborate, it created a file that is now posted here. If you go here at the end of the line here, your recording options, you can just watch the video you just created. It contains, again, the video and audio. You can download the file. It would download an MP4 file, which is a generic video format. You can change the name. You can copy the link, and again, if you want to give your students the option of either rewatching the session they attended or watch the session that they could not attend, then you would give them the link. Again, you would either copy and paste this into your session or into your relevant Blackboard page, or you can send it out with an announcement. This is a link to the video of the session we had. And if you have a caption file, you can add that. That's otherwise how it would work. Okay, so if you need to do anything with this recording, it's posted here. This is where you would retrieve it. All right, let me come back to this window. And you would know that your session is being recorded or not, because first of all, you would have started the recording. But on your top left menu, you can see right now, I have a camera, my little camera icon with the red button that's on. That means I'm recording, and it gives me the option to stop recording if I want to. So I'm going to keep recording, obviously. Okay, so those are, again, your key options for Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So again, I will take a little break here, and if you have questions, you can post them in chat. I'll be sure to answer them. So if there are things that were not clear in my initial demonstration, you can let me know right now. I know there aren't many of us in this session, but if you guys have questions, please post them in chat, and I'll be answering them.
Could I just ask them with my voice?
Sure. Hopefully the recording will get that good, but okay, go ahead.
I'm Jill Ordman. I'm in history. I'm an adjunct.
Okay.
So I had a question, I guess, first off, to go with what we were just talking about, the recording. Are there any special concerns for permissions to record students if I have a group of us talking about something I'm presenting?
Well, we haven't been given any guidance as to that.
Okay.
You may tell your students that you're recording this mostly for reviewing purposes. I mean, you're not going to sell this on the internet.
Exactly,
it's just saying, right? Yeah, and those links, if I were you, I would keep them within Blackboard. So you would send them as an announcement, or you will post them somewhere where people can retrieve it. You're not sending them out to the world.
Right.
Posting them on.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not going to post that on Twitter and everybody can see. Just for the privacy of your students that keep everything within the Blackboard environment, then I guess it's safe.
I'll double check in each session to make sure they're okay with it, just to be, perfunctory.
Right, and you might want to ask your students if they're okay with the recording, and you can explain why you are recording, because not everybody can make it, for accessibility purposes. So.
And then speaking of accessibility, is there a caption button to hit to include closed captioning?
No.
Okay. I'm used to that in Zoom, so.
Yeah, I know. Not in Collaborate. There are other ways of doing that, and I'm not sure whether Learning Tech has. But actually, again, Collaborate does not have an automatic option to create captions. So that's something to keep in mind. However, if I may though, if you do a recording of your session, and then you upload it as a private video on YouTube, then YouTube might be able to caption it.
Oh, okay.
Now you would keep that video as private on the setting where only people with the link can actually see it, so it's still kind of private. But as you do your setting up in YouTube, they might be able to generate the captions.
Right. Cool. And then the other question I had was, you referred to either doing sharing your software usage or sharing stuff through Collaborate. In my classes, I do history classes, so usually what I'm projecting in the classroom is like a website I make from my pre-academic career path of doing web design stuff. So I'll project that and kind of scroll through it as we're talking. Should I do that in Collaborate by sharing the screen on my computer, or should I share that through Collaborate?
So it depends what it is. If it is something static, you can just share your window or share whatever application you use. I'm sharing different tabs from Chrome. I'm using Chrome as a browser, and Blackboard Collaborate gives you the option to share specific tabs. If you have multiple tabs open, you can do that. So if you want to show videos, I mean, my sense is that if you want to show a video, just put the video in your course and don't bother, because it's media over media, and it's not going to look very, very good if you run a YouTube video while you're recording. Then post it in Blackboard and have them do that.
Right. Because my sites are just like your outline and some images of art to talk about. I just want to get it so that all our little faces are there in little boxes so we can see each other, and to also talk about the material that's being projected in quotes on our screen. So
right. And you can go back and forth.
Yeah.
And you can see you have a list of your participants, so you can still check who's here and who's not. You have a participation tab that tells you exactly who's around, so you can decide on that. What I would also do, if you're going to do something that has some kind of complexity to it, or it needs some kind of following, your students have to pay attention. Before the session, I would provide either a script, if you have one, or a note-taking outline.
Right.
So, for instance, I have one that I've actually created for another activity in my classes. So here it is. It's for a video that I have them watch in class, and then they have to take notes. So it's just a basic PDF. I'm going to make it bigger. Zoom in. So again, the idea is to make them, this is a video, basically I broke it into 4 segments, and I paused the video at the end of each segment, and then, point them at the kind of key concept that I want them for sure to remember, and have take notes, like guide their note taking as they are going through your session, so that even as you're going through, different images, different things, they can still stay on track as what you're trying to do, by you kind of guiding them into, okay, this is what you should be paying attention. This particular idea is important, or this particular person, etc. So guide their processing the entire thing, so that, especially if you have a lecture that's pretty long, like in an hour, it's hard to sustain people's attention for that long.
Yeah.
Having something like this given to them ahead of time, so they can jot themselves notes as you go, and keep them on what you're doing.
And if you want, I'm walking along doing that as we're as we go through it. So this makes sense to transition to tech approach.
If you want to do that as well, another option is that you make them complete it, and then once your session is done, you can make them upload it in Blackboard as an assignment, and you can eyeball that, and you can either grade that or not, or just eyeball it and say, okay, you did it, get full points, or you didn't do it and you get no points, whichever one you want. But just to make sure that they're not just passively, listening to you and watching you do your thing. So that's another option for what you have. And it actually works better than just giving them a copy of your slides, because your slides are yours, right? They're a reflection of your reasoning and what you're doing. Their notes should be theirs. So that's the idea here.
Yeah.
So seems like you already know a lot of things. So I'm assuming you know how to post YouTube videos in Blackboard.
Yeah, I just don't use YouTube videos much because it's a problem with doing history. Yeah.
Okay. Or any videos of any kinds, or posting images. Okay, so you're good with that. Another option that what you can do, again, depending on the activity you have in mind and what you're trying to do, is either create a discussion board before the session. Let's say you want them to read something before they come to the session, just as preparation, right? Have a discussion board where they can post their key questions, or is there a sticking point, something that's clear from the reading that for sure you want to cover once you're all in session together. So you could have a pre-session discussion board, or you can have a post-session discussion board. If people still, after the session, they think, oh man, I had this question, I didn't think about it at the time, they can post it in the discussion board. Or after they've rewatched the recording of your session, they can come up with questions, and then you can kind of clean up on the back end and clean up in a post-discussion and post-session discussion. Then you can see what are the remaining questions, what do I need to talk about. If there are a lot of questions, maybe you decide, okay, we're going to have another Collaborate session just to talk about those 2 or 3 points that clearly a lot of people didn't really click with. So you can decide that. So you're good with discussion boards as well?
Yeah, where does that pop up in the Collaborate interface?
So let me show you that then. I'm gonna stop sharing that part, and I'm gonna go back to my class, and I'll show you how to do this. So my Chrome tab, here we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna go to a general Blackboard area, and so that's easy. Discussion board is a tool, so you go to your tool menu, and it's the first one that pops. So you click on this board. Either you already have one ready, or you create one. I'm going to create a new forum, and then it's working. Okay. All right. You would give it a name. So post-session discussion. You would give it a description. You would tell them this is for remaining questions after on session on on World War I or whatever. The forum availability, if you have it, so you can put a start date and an end date. I would leave it at standard view. You can decide whether you want to grade the forum or not. So if you want to give it no points, you just want people to talk in there, no grade. And if you click that option of a grade discussion forum, you give it a number of points, and automatically it will generate an item in your grade book where your students will retrieve their grade. And then you have a whole bunch of options as to how you want people to participate, right? If you want to allow anonymous posts, if you want to allow people to edit their post or whatever. So you have all these options to go through, and otherwise you can leave all the defaults, and then you would click on submit. And again, it will be stuck in. So here's my new session. I will click next. Again, I would provide some extra parameters here, and I'm going to click on submit. And it's going to be at the bottom as always, and here's my post-session discussion board.
Okay.
So then your student can click on that and go in there after having watched this, either they were in the session or they've watched the recording, and then say, okay, but I still have a question about whatever they have a question about. And then again, you can decide how you want to address this. Either you want to address the questions directly in the discussion board, or again, if you notice a lot of questions, you go, oh, well, let's have another session then, so we can actually talk some more about this particular topic, so that you can decide then what you want to do with that. So that's an option. Okay. What I would recommend also is not to have your sessions be too long. Because again, people might not be available for extensive periods of time. People who don't have good connectivity, a lot of our students don't have, again, a ton of data in their data plan or a good internet connection. So it might be easier for them if you break things. So I would recommend in general that to take breaks. If you can, and in that case, you would pause the recording, let people go away for 5 minutes, have a drink of water, go play with your dog or whatever, and then come back 5 minutes later, and you resume the recording and you resume the session to give people a break, and maybe they can log out, and log back in, so it kind of reset their connection, so that everything would work. So again, be mindful of your students' attention span and mindful of the amount of time they have to spend in that session. So that's another option. So apart from Jill, anyone had any question? Michael or G? Welcome, G. I know you just arrived. Otherwise, what I can do is show you some asynchronous options. That means once you're done with your Collaborate session, then do things outside of that. Okay. So let me go back and reshare my screen with you so we can look at other options. All right, there we go. Okay, so again, one thing I would recommend is if you have files or documents or anything that you would like your students to review before the session, I would put those in Blackboard. So what I did here, before the Collaborate session, I would put my files into a file folder. And so how you create a file folder would be to build it, to content folder, and you would click on that. And you can call your folder whatever. And so if you open it, I just put a couple of files in there just to show you. My connection is a bit slow today. Here we go. So I just attached a bunch of files with this session. So this would be the stuff I would ask my student to review before they get into the session, in the Collaborate session. Can you mute your mic if you're coughing?
Sorry, I forgot.
That's okay. So again, that's a way of having your students prep for the session and not just show up unprepared for it. It might be easier. And again, they might have some questions ready as a result. But again, if you're going to use a bunch of different things, so this is where you would include the note-taking outline or any image files that you're going to use, which allows them to have the file on their own computer. So even if the connection is not great and they can't really see too well what's on your screen, at least they have the image that you're using, and so they can listen to you and understand what you're doing with this. Here is where you would have your Collaborate link, which is the link on which your student would click in order to join the session. I just created this again. I just grabbed the link when I created the session, and this is just basically a URL. So you can use the build content and then web link. You would click on that, copy and paste the URL of your Collaborate session, and this is where it would land. And you can edit it. You can give it a different name. Do whatever you need to do. You can provide an explanation here. So again, this is just the link that I copied and pasted that I copied from the session when I created it. And then I provided a description here, and you could reiterate the date and time of your session. And you can also, again, attach files here. So again, if you have session files that you want your students to have, you can also attach them here, and your student will have access to them just as they get access to the link to your session. So that's another way of doing it, and giving them the materials they need as a result. So this is an example of a YouTube video. Again, if you don't know how to do that, again, I can explain. And again, if you have images that you know you're going to be using in your session, post them somewhere. Again, whether it's in the folder, whether it's here directly as an image, whether it's attached with the link to the session, make sure you provide your students with all the materials they are going to need as they go through the session, so that they come ready with whatever materials they're going to need. This is an example I posted of a different video service. So this is a Vimeo video, which is another common video service. And then again, you can have assignment and test after the session, so that you can mobilize whatever your students are supposed to have learned based on your session. So those are all those items, of course, are asynchronous. They do not require your students to be in one place and what time. Again, whether you're posting a file folder, whether you're posting links, videos, discussion board, images, documents, etc., those are all the options you have when you create asynchronous content. So how much asynchronous versus synchronous is, of course, your decision based on what it is that you are trying to do. What I would do is I would make myself a big kind of whiteboard and say, okay, this is all the stuff I was going to do in class, and now it's gone. How do I substitute? What do I do? What course objectives was I fulfilling this week? And how can I replace it now that I no longer have the face-to-face option? And it may not be a single thing. It may be a multiplicity of things that you may have to do. It may be Collaborate plus discussion board, or it may be Collaborate plus test or assignment, or it may be no Collaborate at all, a video that is asynchronous, and some other things. So those are all the options. Blackboard, again, gives you a lot of options as to what you can do with all of the features to which you have access. So again, that's pretty much all I have for you today, but I'm happy to take questions about anything that you need to know. So again, either you can type them in chat, or if you want to, you can unmute your mic this time and then ask me, and I'm happy to answer. I did tell you there would be ample time for questions. Or if there is anything in Blackboard that you would like me to show you, I'm also happy to do that. Going once, going twice.
Can material from Blackboard be moved over to Ultra without it being too dramatically changed?
Well, they can. Yeah. Okay. but I'm not sure you can link from your Blackboard page into Collaborate. You would have
Right.
to upload from your computer.
Right.
So again,
Okay.
it's pretty easy to do. When you go into your share files, you have this
Mhm.
big Add Files menu. You click on that.
Okay.
It will open your regular thing, and you would go look for your files and open them, and then they would
Okay.
populate over here. Again, that's where you need to pay attention to file size, because if you put in a ginormous
Right.
file, there is some conversion happening, so it may take longer if you have a really, really big file. So
Okay.
keep file size in mind as you do those
Mhm.
things.
Okay.
So let me go back in the chat, see if there is anything. Anything else, you guys? Michael Craig has been pretty quiet. So Michael, if
Okay.
you have any questions, just, pop them in chat or unmute your mic, and I'm happy to answer anything. Otherwise, guys, keep in mind that the Learning Technologies Office is still offering sessions like this one on different topics. So there are things on, building an online presence in your course, and there are sessions on assessment, assignment, test, and grading. So if you're not super familiar with the Blackboard Gradebook, this is a good session to attend. And be on the lookout for more emails from the Learning Technologies Office, because they're constantly updating their schedule with new stuff that are available. And of course, you can have individualized sessions with the learning technology people, so that they can help you individually, specifically with your courses or whatever resources you need. So again, there's an email address, which is learningtechnologies@cod.edu, and then you can make virtual appointments with individual designers and technologists, so that they can help you out exactly, tailor their advice specifically to your course. So keep that in mind. And don't delete their emails when they come in. I know our mailboxes are getting full, but don't delete their emails. Just make sure you check out what they have available, because they're not just offering help this week. They'll be helping everybody however long we stay in remote instruction. So don't think that this is this week and never again, and goodbye, you're on your own, good luck. And no, it's not going to work like that. Anything else I can help you with, guys? Otherwise, we might be just about ready to close this session. So Jill, Michael, Z, any more questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Good. Cool. Thanks
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you for coming. Good luck with your courses.